Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of high school DxD, and he wakes up as Hades with the record of Ragnarok summoning system. What is he gonna do inside of DxD?
Hades, more than the summoning ceremony had. Heracles spent the afternoon helping workers unload supplies. Thor sat on the library roof. Zeus tried to visit him 3 times. Poseidon stopped Zeus twice. The third attempt succeeded because Buddha gave Zeus the wrong directions on purpose. Thor looked up when Zeus climbed onto the roof. "Brother." Thor said nothing. Zeus sat beside him. The roof groaned. "Do you remember me?" Thor looked toward the mana pool. "Enough." Zeus' grin faded slightly. "That sounds ominous. You talk more here. I have had a difficult adjustment." Thor looked at him. Zeus laughed. Below, Heracles carried a stone beam with 3 workers hanging from one end, trying to convince him to put it down. Adam joined him. "You know they have equipment." Heracles lowered the beam. "I was helping. You were making the equipment feel insecure." Heracles laughed. The workers relaxed. That was the pattern. Heracles made rooms warmer. Thor made them quieter. Neither did it intentionally. At dinner, the table changed again. Heracles asked names. Thor answered only when asked directly. Poseidon approved of the second approach. Adam approved of the first. Zeus approved of hearing himself speak. Buddha stole from everyone's plate. Adamas reviewed patrol reports between bites. Tesla and Beelzebub argued about whether Mjolnir could be used as a stable resonance source. Thor looked at them once. Both stopped. Hades noticed. "Useful." Tesla whispered, "Extremely." Beelzebub nodded. Thor looked again. They ate in silence for almost 30 seconds. Then Heracles asked Merek about the valley. Not the ranking. Not the next fight. The valley. How many people? Merek gave the current count. How many guards? Too few, Adama said. How many healers? Merek answered. Heracles frowned. That is too few. The head healer, sitting 2 tables away, looked over. Yes. Heracles stood. Can I train? Hades asked, as a healer. No, as someone useful before a healer arrives. Adam smiled. The next morning, Heracles joined a first response class. It was absurd. A demigod who could tear monsters apart sat on a wooden bench, learning how to splint a broken leg without cutting off circulation. He listened carefully. When the instructor asked for a volunteer, Zeus tried to leave. Heracles caught him. No. Zeus looked betrayed. You are my brother. Exactly. For the next hour, Zeus became a practice casualty. Poseidon watched from the doorway with the faintest possible satisfaction. Thor did not attend. He went to the outer ridge. Adamas found him there. You are outside the patrol line. Thor looked at the marker, then stepped back inside it. Adamas stopped. Most gods argued. Thor adjusted. Adamas pointed toward the northern ridge. Norse observers. I know. You are not going to confront them. No. Why? Thor rested Mjolnir against his shoulder. They want me to. Adamas considered. Good. He stood beside him. The observers remained until sunset. Neither man acknowledged them again. That irritated the observers more than a battle. At dusk, Odin's next message arrived. Not an order. A request for private audience with Thor before the formal meeting. Hades brought the letter to him, unopened. Thor looked at the seal. You did not read it. It is addressed to you. The household usually inspects political messages. Yes. Thor looked at Hades. Then why not this? Because the question is whether you choose to hear him. Thor took the letter. The entire room watched, without pretending not to. He broke the seal. Read. Then folded it. No. Hades nodded. Merek began writing the refusal. Thor stopped him. I will. He wrote 3 words. I will not. No explanation. No threat. No Hades seal. His own hand. The reply went back to Odin. That night, Thor joined Poseidon on the bench by the pool. They sat in silence. Heracles came outside with 2 cups. He offered one to Poseidon, one to Thor. Neither asked what was in them. They drank. Adam passed behind with apples. Zeus shouted from the kitchen that first response training was an attack on divine dignity. Buddha shouted back that Zeus had failed bandaging. Tesla asked whether Mjolnir could power a city. Beelzebub said not if Tesla touched it. Thor closed his eyes. Poseidon said, loud. Thor nodded. After a while he said, good. Poseidon looked at him. Thor did not explain. He did not need to. Chapter 48, The Norse Tremble. Odin came in person after his emissaries failed. Hades received him beside the Mana pool. Thor stood at Hades' right, silent. Zeus poured himself wine he had not been offered. Poseidon watched the water. Your summon bears the identity of my son, Odin said. His existence destabilizes treaties across the factions. His existence is not a clerical problem, Hades replied. Loki's hidden spell activated beneath the table. Runes climbed Thor's boots, trying to force Mjolnir toward an Asgardian gate. Thor closed one hand. The runes shattered. He threw the hammer past Odin. It crossed the valley and destroyed the concealed gate generator on a distant ridge, then returned to his palm. Adama's guards dragged Loki's agents from the rocks. Odin's single eye narrowed. You knew. Buddha knew, Hades said. I allowed the attempt so your court could see Thor's answer. Thor finally spoke. Do not steal from my family again. Heracles stepped onto the terrace, carrying a broken gate component. The villages near the ridge are safe. Your agents chose an unfortunate place for a treaty dispute. Odin studied him, then Adam, then the brothers gathered behind Hades. The delegation had arrived expecting a summon to stand alone. It found a house that had already decided where the boundary was. You call him family after taking him from Asgard, Odin said. I offered him a place. He chose it. If Thor returns willingly, the treaties can be repaired, Odin said. If he returns unwillingly, Hades replied, the treaties will be repaired after we defend him. The Norse delegation departed with its claim abandoned. Zeus raised his cup after them. A peaceful meeting. Adamas looked at the broken ridge. Your standards are diseased. Hades ignored both comments and asked Thor whether he wanted the room overlooking the pool or the quiet room above the library. Thor considered, quiet. Adam carried the key to him. The political crisis ended with a choice too ordinary for the broadcast to understand. Thor had chosen where to sleep, and no god had chosen for him. Odin asked to speak with Thor alone after the failed compulsion. Hades looked at Thor. Thor shook his head. No. Odin's face hardened. You fear I will persuade you. Thor's grip tightened around Mjolnir. No. Then why refuse? Thor looked at the family gathered behind Hades. Because you asked after trying to force me. That landed. The Norse king looked older for a moment. Not weaker. Older. Loki's agents had already been dragged from the ridge. The broken gate generator lay on the terrace beneath Adama's guard. Every witness had seen the runes climb Thor's boots. There was no private version left to hide inside. Odin changed tactics. The treaties between Asgard and the underworld were written around identities. If another Thor exists here, every oath tied to my son's name becomes unstable. Tesla leaned toward Beelzebub. Fascinating. Beelzebub elbowed him. Hades said, then amend the treaties. You speak as though centuries of law are a clerical error. No, I speak as though law exists to describe reality, not deny it. Odin's eye narrowed. Chin had not yet been summoned. Hades carried this argument alone. Thor did not. My name is mine. Everyone looked at him. Odin said, you carry memories of Asgard. Yes. Mjolnir. Yes. My blood. Thor paused. Another world's version of it. That distinction mattered. Odin knew. Hades knew. The treaties had not been written for reincarnated identities, imported by a system no pantheon recognized. The law was actually uncertain. Loki's compulsion had tried to replace uncertainty with force. That was the real offense. Odin looked at the broken generator. Loki exceeded his authority. Adamas laughed once. Convenient. Odin's gaze shifted to him. You are. Security. Your tone is not part of the treaty. Zeus covered a smile. Hades let Adamas stand. Odin asked, what do you demand? Thor answered before Hades. Nothing. Odin looked at him. Thor continued. Leave. The word carried more weight than a speech. Odin's pride rose. Then Heracles stepped onto the terrace with a report from the ridge villages. No civilian deaths. He placed it on the table. The gate generator was hidden close enough to 3 homes that Thor could have destroyed them by answering your force with force. He did not. Odin read the first page. Heracles continued. If you want a treaty argument, have one. Do not build it where strangers pay. Hades watched the old god absorb the line. It was not Norse law, not devil law, not divine hierarchy. A simpler boundary. Do not spend people who did not choose the argument. Odin sat. That was unexpected. Very well. The meeting restarted. This time as negotiation. Merek brought the relevant treaties. Tesla and Beelzebub were banned from improving them. Buddha sat in the corner and announced every time someone was about to lie. Odin hated him within 10 minutes. The Asgard clause applies to beings recognized by Asgard as native divine continuities, Merek read. Hades asked, is Thor recognized as a native continuity? Odin said, he carries the identity. Buddha said, not an answer. Odin glared. Merek continued. No current registry class exists for imported divine counterparts. Thor said, then create one. Odin looked at him. Tesla brightened. Excellent. Hades pointed at Tesla. No. Tesla sat back down. They wrote a temporary classification. Not Asgardian property. Not summoned copy. Independent divine counterpart, carrying self-recognized Thor identity. The phrase was ugly. Merek liked it for that reason. Ugly law often meant fewer hidden assumptions. Odin signed only after adding a clause stating the classification did not invalidate the original Thor's rights in Asgard. Hades accepted. Thor read every line, then signed his own name. That mattered more than either ruler's seal. The treaty amendment did not make Odin happy. It made the next compulsion illegal. Good enough. Before leaving, Odin stood in front of Thor. If you ever wish to see Asgard. Thor looked at him. Odin stopped. Changed the sentence. You may request passage. Thor nodded once. Not yes. Not no. A door. The delegation departed. Zeus raised his cup. A peaceful meeting. Adamas looked at the destroyed ridge. Your standards are diseased. This time Odin was still close enough to hear. He almost smiled. Almost. Afterward, Hades asked Thor again which room he wanted. Quiet. Adam carried the key. Heracles helped move the bed because the frame had been built for a devil half Thor's size. Poseidon inspected the window. Zeus tried to hang a banner. Thor removed it. By midnight, the political crisis had become furniture. Hades found that reassuring. The greatest proof that Thor had chosen the house was not the treaty. It was the fact that his hammer leaned beside a bed no one else had selected for him. Chapter 49, The Lucifer Match. Serzech chose an empty moon as the battlefield. No civilians, no property, nothing fragile enough to restrain two kings whose power could erase cities. Before the signal, Serzech met Hades at the center crater. You have used our laws better than families born to them. Because I read them as tools, not inheritance. And if you become number one, I keep what I built. I do not claim your office or your sister's tomorrow. Serzech smiled faintly. Good, then we can fight without a misunderstanding. Power of destruction turned the horizon crimson. Hades met it with divine force. The collision carved a trench around the moon. Serzech compressed destruction into spheres too dense to parry, forcing Hades to redirect them into the void. Each redirection cost ground. Across the field, Graphia froze Poseidon's sea in midair. Adam copied the timing of his ice magic, but could not match its inherited structure. Tesla and Beelzebub opened a heat channel through the frozen current. Thor shattered the exposed formation, while Heracles shielded the technicians from debris. Serzech appeared inside Hades' guard and drove destruction against his ribs. Hades caught his wrist. Skin burned from his hand, but he held on long enough to strike with his forehead and force separation. You could rule openly, Serzech said, breathing hard. I already do. The battle moved into the moon's broken core. Buddha called paths that vanished under destruction. Adamas coordinated retreats. Zeus entered his strongest form and bought Hades 3 seconds by holding back a crimson sphere with both hands. Hades used those seconds to gather the mana of his territory through the legal bond of his crown not stealing from its people, but drawing on the reserves they had authorized for this match. Serzech did not waste motion. Every sphere of destruction arrived with a reason. Divide Adam from Hades, force Poseidon to spend water defensively, make Tesla move a prototype before it stabilized, push Beelzebub into shielding instead of analysis. Hades respected the precision. Respect did not slow him. He drove the Bident through a crimson wave and felt the shaft start to dissolve. Beelzebub's vibration counter caught the failure before it reached his hands. Tesla's field added a second skeleton around the weapon, bright and furious. Buddha's voice cut through the link. Left path dies, right path lies, forward hurts. Hades said, forward then. Heracles braced the collapsing ground. Thor struck the moon's inner wall and turned falling stone into a ring of cover. Adamas moved the non-combat support line without waiting for praise. Zeus, laughing through blood at his lip, held one crimson sphere in both hands until Hades passed beneath it. Serzech met him in the core, eyes bright with strain. You built a kingdom inside a game. Hades said, No, I used the game to make the kingdom impossible to ignore. They charged again. The broadcast crystals flickered, failed, returned, and showed only the red-black heart of the moon breaking around two kings who refused to step back. The empty moon began to break before either king used full power. Serzech's destruction did not behave like ordinary force. It removed the argument that matter should remain matter. Stone disappeared in smooth red spheres. Hades' aura could resist the edges, but every contact told him the same thing. Blocking indefinitely was losing slowly. So he stopped blocking. The next sphere came toward his chest. Hades stepped aside. It erased a tunnel through the moon behind him. Serzech was already moving. The Devil King crossed the gap and drove a fist into Hades' ribs. Destruction wrapped around the strike. Hades caught the wrist. Pain burned through his palm. He headbutted Serzech hard enough to fracture the ground. They separated. Neither smiled. Across the battlefield, Graphia froze Poseidon's water into a glittering wall. Poseidon broke the first layer. The second formed inside the current. He stopped. Interesting. Graphia's expression remained professional. That was not intended as entertainment. It improved when you stopped using quantity. She raised one hand. The entire ice field became blades. Poseidon moved. Adam intercepted 3 before they reached Tesla's command frame. He copied Graphia's timing, not her inherited demonic structure. The difference forced him to adapt. Tesla shouted, "The phase change is the key." Beelzebub shouted, "Stop narrating." A destruction sphere crossed the support lane. Heracles stepped into it. His club met the edge. The weapon began to vanish. He did not let go. Thor's Mjolnir struck from the side and changed the sphere's trajectory just enough for Heracles to throw it into the void. The club's head was half gone. Heracles looked at it. That was a good club. Thor said, "Was." Heracles laughed. Serzech heard. Hades. The next attack split into 12. Your family is enjoying this. Some of them have poor judgment. Zeus shouted through the link, "I heard that." A crimson sphere trapped him against the moon's inner wall. He entered his hardened form and caught it between both hands. Destruction ate into his skin. For once, Zeus did not laugh. Hades. Not fear. Warning. The sphere was too dense. Beelzebub found the frequency first. Tesla. I see it. Their field wrapped around Zeus' arms. Not enough to stop destruction. Enough to slow the rate. Poseidon sent water through the support channel, cooling divine flesh that was not burning in any ordinary sense. Adam crossed the broken ground. Hades did not. Serzech had positioned the sphere to force the choice. Save Zeus or continue the king's duel. Hades looked at his brother. Zeus looked back. Do not. Hades understood. Adam reached him first. Heracles second. Thor anchored the ground. They had it. The family did not need Hades to be every rescue. He turned back to Serzech. The Devil King nodded once. Respect. Then tried to erase him. Hades drove forward. The Bident entered the destruction field. Metal screamed. Beelzebub's vibration counter activated. Tesla's lattice reinforced the shaft. For 3 seconds, the weapon existed in a state it had never been designed to survive. Hades used all 3. The first prong broke through. Serzech caught it. The second cut his shoulder. Graphia appeared. Poseidon's trident stopped her. Their weapons collided. The moon's crust split. Adama's voice came through every channel. Support line move, now. No one questioned him. The non-combat technicians relocated before the fracture reached them. A month earlier, Adama's would have issued 5 more orders. Now the household knew the route. Hades noticed, even while fighting. Good. Serzech noticed too. You built command redundancy. I built people. That sounds sentimental. It is expensive enough to be practical. Serzech laughed. Then his aura changed. The next destruction wave had no spheres. No geometry. Just red. The entire horizon became erasure. Buddha stopped chewing candy. That is bad. Tesla stared. Define bad. Everything forward dies. Useful. No genius, move. Hades looked at the wave. Left path. Dead. Right path. A trap. Forward. Pain. Buddha had said it before. This time, Hades understood the scale. Forward. The family reacted. Heracles braced the collapsing floor. Thor created a ring of cover from moonstone. Poseidon layered water between destruction fronts. Tesla and Beelzebub reinforced the bident. Adam watched the pulse rhythm. Zeus, bleeding, returned to his feet. Adama's moved everyone not needed in the final line. Hades ran. The wave hit. His coat vanished first. Skin burned. Divine orator. The bident began dissolving again. Tesla screamed measurements. Beelzebub screamed at Tesla to stop screaming measurements. Adam's voice cut through both. 3. Hades stepped. 2. Serzech saw him. 1. The destruction pulse thinned for less than a heartbeat. Hades crossed. The bident struck Serzech's guard. The Devil King blocked. The impact sent them both through the moon's inner wall. No audience feed followed for several seconds. Only darkness. Serzech coughed blood. Hades' left arm hung burned. They stood in a cavity lit by red power leaking through cracks. You could rule the underworld openly, Serzech said. I already do. No, you govern a territory. Rank 1 would make people ask whether you should govern more. I do not want your office. That may not matter. Hades' eyes narrowed. Serzech continued. Power creates expectations, even when the holder refuses them. That was not a threat. It was the most serious warning Serzech had given him. Hades looked at the destroyed moon around them. Then I will make the refusal legible. Serzech smiled faintly. That sounds like you. They attacked again. Outside the cavity, the family fought Graphia's control network and the surviving support constructs. Inside, the 2 kings stopped speaking. Hades learned Serzech's rhythm. Serzech learned Hades' patience. Every exchange became shorter, more dangerous. A misstep no longer meant injury. It meant erasure. Hades took 1 sphere across the side. Pain disappeared before he could feel it. Part of his armor went with it. He answered with a thrust that Serzech barely redirected. The bident cut his cheek. They separated. Serzech wiped the blood. Finally, Hades almost smiled. Then the moon cracked open above them. Buddha's voice returned through the link. Exit now. Neither argued. They launched upward as the cavity collapsed. The broadcast crystals found them again on the surface. The audience saw two kings emerge from a dead moon, looking less like rulers than survivors of the same bad decision. Then Surzech raised his hand. Hades lowered the bident. Final exchange. No speech. No audience performance. Just the last question. The answer would continue in Chapter 50. Chapter 50, Number 1 and Qin Shi Huang. Surzech released destruction without shape. Crimson power filled the moon's core, erasing stone before it could melt. Hades drove forward behind the bident. Tesla's field braced the weapon. Beelzebub's vibration counter kept its shaft from dissolving. Poseidon's water cooled Hades' burning arm. Adam matched the rhythm of Surzech's attack and called the instant between pulses. Hades struck in that instant. The bident pierced the destruction field and stopped against Surzech's chest. The force behind it carried both kings through the moon's crust and onto the shattered surface. Surzech tried to rise. His power flickered. Hades remained standing because Heracles held the collapsing ground. Thor anchored the field with Mjolnir. Zeus supported the failing barrier. Buddha had guided them toward the only surviving path, and Adamas had placed every member where the family needed them. The referee's count reached 10. Surzech Lucifer is defeated. Hades claims the number 1 rank. For several seconds, the arena was quiet enough to hear cooling stone crack. Hades lowered his weapon and offered Surzech a hand. Surzech accepted it. The underworld will expect a speech, he said. It will survive disappointment. The family returned to the Marnapool estate beneath a sky filled with broadcast lights. Residents crowded the road, but Hades went first to the courtyard where their journey had become a home. The system appeared one final time. Achievement confirmed, number 1. Final reward unlocked, Qin Shi Huang. Golden light formed a road across the pool. A blindfolded emperor walked down it with a confident smile, robes stirring around him as though an imperial court followed in his wake. A king who climbed another world's throne, Qin said. I had to see him for myself. Hades offered the final pawn piece. It multiplied within his palm, adapting to the emperor's weight. Join us as family, Hades said. There is no disposable place at my table. Qin touched the piece and laughed when crimson light crowned him. Then your table has gained another king. That night, every chair in the dining hall was occupied. Adam passed apples to Heracles. Poseidon and Thor maintained their comfortable silence. Zeus retold the final battle with increasingly impossible details. Beelzebub and Tesla argued over which of them had kept the bident intact. Buddha stole food from Qin's plate and discovered the emperor stole it back faster. Hades sat at the head of the table with a ranking document unopened beside him. He remembered rain, a gate, and the first family he had died to save. He remembered the nightmare of brothers lost in another history. Neither memory owned him now, but both had taught him the meaning of a crown. Number 1 was not a throne above everyone else. It was the power to make certain no one at this table was erased, hidden, or abandoned again. Adam set an apple on top of the ranking document. You're thinking too much. Hades looked around at his loud, difficult, living family. Qin Shi Huang inspected the dining hall before he chose a chair. Not rudely, Hades thought, imperially, as if every table revealed the laws of the country that used it. He sat only after Adam pushed the apple bowl toward him and Heracles shifted to make room without being asked. Poseidon ignored him. Thor ignored everyone. Zeus began embellishing the final battle before the servants finished pouring tea. Qin Shi Huang said, Your court is loud. Hades said, It is alive. That answer pleased him more than flattery would have. He asked about roads next. then food stores, then courts for worker disputes, then who commanded evacuation if the mana pool was attacked while Hades fought elsewhere. Merek nearly wept at meeting a summoned king whose first questions created more paperwork. Tesla declared the paperwork inefficient. Beelzebub suggested a curse that would punish false filings. Adam told both of them to let Merek eat first. Hades watched them with the unopened ranking document beside his hand. He had chased number 1 to protect this impossible table, but the table had become larger than the rank. It held brothers, heroes, monsters, scientists, kings, servants passing safely between them, and a future no old tragedy had permission to steal. Later, when the hall quieted, Hades stepped onto the balcony. The mana pool shone below. The underworld's messages waited in sealed stacks. Behind him, someone laughed, someone argued, and someone dropped a plate. He did not turn away from the sound. Hades said, "Tomorrow we govern." The registrar's seal had barely cooled when a bell rang in the eastern court. It was not the alarm bell. It was the bell used when someone with legal standing demanded to be heard, and the sound brought every conversation in the shrine to a halt. Merek appeared at the doorway with a ledger under one arm. 3 houses have filed objections. One says the match was divine interference. One says the final exchange violated the broadcast rules. The third has not written an argument at all. It has sent a knife. He placed the knife on the table. Its blade was black, narrow, and wet with a residue that smoked against the wood. Hades did not touch it. Beelzebub leaned over the table, inhaled once, and drew back with interest rather than alarm. A curse keyed to the holder's blood. It would have opened when you signed the ranking. Qin Shi Huang looked from the weapon to the crown. They challenged the title without challenging the man. They challenged the man through the title, Hades said. That is cheaper. Adam took the ledger from Merek and read the 3 filings. His expression stayed gentle, but the room's temperature seemed to lower around him. The second objection is false. The broadcast record shows the judge accepted the exchange before the barrier fell. Tesla reached for the record crystal. Beelzebub caught his wrist. Do not crack it with your fingers. I was going to use a calibrated field. You were going to use the field you used yesterday. It is not calibrated. It is calibrated to a margin of. You are both going to stop touching evidence, Hades said. The brothers stopped. Merek hid a smile behind the ledger. Hades opened the first filing and read the objection aloud. The writer claimed that Hades had used overwhelming force to make the arena appear compliant. The statement avoided one essential fact. Every participating king had entered the ring voluntarily, and every official had remained within the boundary until the match was called. We can answer it with the recording, Merek said. No, we answer it with the rule that makes the recording unnecessary. Hades tapped the final paragraph. The objection asks the registry to judge intent after a legal result. If they accept that, every losing house can reopen a match by claiming fear. Qin nodded once. Then make them choose between preserving the law and preserving their pride. The summons went out before noon. Hades required the 3 houses to appear together, not in private rooms where each could pretend it had been singled out. The guards were instructed to admit the messenger who had carried the knife, provided he came unarmed and brought the name of the person who had paid him. He came with a young devil whose coat was too fine for his frightened face. The young devil had expected execution. When Hades offered him a chair, he remained standing. You sent the blade, Hades said. I delivered it. That was not my question. The devil looked toward the door. Adam stood there with his arms folded, not blocking the exit, which made the choice more honest. My father said the ranking would destroy our protection. He said if I did not carry the knife, the family would lose its claim to the northern road. Did he tell you what the curse would do? Beelzebub turned the knife with a gloved fingertip. It would have killed the signer and marked the shrine as the murderer. The curse was designed to create its own evidence. The young devil's knees gave way. He caught the edge of the table instead of falling. Hades let the silence remain. The room contained the young devil's fear, the official's embarrassment, and the quiet scrape of Chin's finger against the arm of his chair. No one could call the silence mercy. It was simply the space in which a fact finished arriving. "You will return to your father," Hades said. "Tell him the knife is preserved, the curse is understood, and his son is alive because I prefer evidence to theatre. Then tell him the northern road is no longer under his protection." The young devil stared. "You are taking it." "I am placing it under the registry's neutral ward until the dispute is heard. Your father will receive the road again if he proves his claim without threatening the court. If he refuses, the people who use it will decide who maintains it. That is not punishment. It is a consequence. Learn the difference before you inherit anything." After the witnesses left, Adam found Hades in the eastern court watching workers replace the damaged gate. The carpenters had discarded the old lock instead of repairing it. Hades had not ordered that choice, but he approved it. "You could have taken the road outright," Adam said. "Then every house would have learned that an objection is a way to surrender property. And if they object again, they will bring better arguments." Adam handed him an apple. Hades looked at it, then at the ink on his fingers. "You have tea, a crown, and now fruit," Adam said. "The court will survive." Across the yard, Chin was questioning the mason about the gate's hinge. Poseidon stood beneath the archway, visibly offended by the amount of time the conversation required. Heracles had taken a hammer from a worker and was helping set the new frame. Thor watched the road, silent and immense. The house had not become peaceful when Hades won. It had become busy with people who believed the victory belonged to them as well. Hades bit into the apple. It was sour. "The title has lasted one morning," Adam said. "How does it feel?" Hades looked at the crown resting on the registry table. It was gold, heavy, and less useful than the ledger beside it. "Like a door," he said, "not a destination." Merek called from the hall. Another delegation had arrived, this one carrying a proposal instead of a weapon. The workers at the gate lifted the final beam into place. Somewhere below, the mana pool began its evening pulse, sending blue light through the foundations and across the feet of everyone who had chosen to remain. Hades set the apple beside the ledger and walked toward the delegation. Chin followed at his left. Adam took the right. No one knelt when the doors opened. They entered with questions, demands, and the wary expression of people who had finally understood that the new #1 faction would have to be dealt with as a government. Hades welcomed them inside. The first delegation represented the Northern Road. Their spokesman was an elderly devil with a silver chain around his throat and a ring on every finger. He bowed to the crown without looking at the workers. "The registry has no authority to move a family root into neutral custody," he said. "The registry has authority to suspend a root when its keeper attempts murder through a forged objection," Hades replied. "You may dispute the suspension. You may not pretend it did not occur." The spokesman's eyes narrowed. "You speak as though the court already belongs to you." "The court belongs to the people who must live under its decisions. I am only the person willing to enforce one." Chin examined the delegation's documents while the spokesman tried to recover the rhythm of the conversation. He did not skim. He read every seal, every amendment, and every line where a road toll had been described as maintenance. "This fee is not a fee," Chin said. The old devil turned toward him. "You are not a registrar." "No, I am the person who noticed that the registrar was paid by the family collecting it." The room changed. Merek immediately asked for the registrar's name. The spokesman reached for a protest, but Hades raised one hand. "Do not answer for him," Hades said. "If the fee is legitimate, its records will survive a question. If it is not, your interruption only gives the lie a witness." The registrar's name appeared on the 4th page. Merek copied it into a separate file. Beelzebub took the document without asking and held it beneath a thin violet flame. A hidden second seal emerged in the paper, stamped over the original contract like a bruise. "There," Beelzebub said, "the root has been paying twice, once to the family, once to a private account." The spokesman's composure broke. "That account was created by a former steward." "Then you will have no objection to returning the missing tolls," Hades said. "The sum is enormous." So was the road. The negotiation lasted until the lamps were lit. Hades refused the delegation's offer of a ceremonial apology because it contained no repayment schedule. Chin refused a second offer because it placed the schedule under a committee whose members were chosen by the people who had taken the money. Adam said nothing until the spokesman accused the workers of being too ignorant to manage a road. "You have been speaking to the throne for an hour," Adam said. "Try speaking to the people who carried your goods." The spokesman looked at the carpenters by the gate. One of them had a bandage around his wrist. Another had stopped working to listen. "They do not understand regional administration," the spokesman said. "They understand a broken hinge," Adam answered. "That is why you should ask them what the road needs." Hades moved the chair away from the center of the room. It was a small gesture, but it forced the spokesman to turn from the crown toward the workers. The first carpenter described the flood damage. The second described the bribes required to report it. A healer explained how the toll schedule had made medicine late during winter. By the time they finished, the delegation had lost the ability to call the route an abstraction. Hades wrote 3 terms on the agreement. The road would remain neutral for 1 year. The stolen tolls would be repaid from the family treasury, not from future travelers. A board of workers, merchants, and healers would review maintenance claims, with the registry retaining the right to remove any member who falsified an account. The old devil stared at the page. "You are dismantling our authority." "I am dismantling the part that depended on no one reading the account. Keep the part that can withstand scrutiny." He signed because refusing would have confirmed every accusation. The ink flashed once, and the neutral ward accepted the agreement. When the delegation finally left, the shrine was quiet except for the scratch of Merek's pen. He had already begun writing the procedures required by the new board. "You wanted a kingdom," Merek said. "You have built a complaint office." "A kingdom without complaints is either empty or deaf." Chin smiled faintly. "Now you sound like a ruler." Hades turned toward him. "I thought you disapproved of the crown." "I disapprove of crowns that expect obedience before they earn confidence. Yours has been forced to listen all day. That is a better beginning than most monarchs receive." From the kitchen came an argument over whether the visiting workers should be charged for supper. Adam walked away before anyone could assign him the decision. A moment later, his voice carried back through the hall. "If anyone charges the people who repaired the gate, I will eat the accounting office's apples." "Those are not apples," Merek called. "They are sealed evidence." "Then they will be very educational." Laughter moved through the room, hesitant at first, and then genuine. Hades stood beneath the registry seal and listened to it. He had expected number 1 to make every room colder. Instead, it had made more people willing to speak before a decision was made. That was a dangerous power. It could be used to expose him as easily as it exposed his enemies. Hades preferred it for that reason. He lifted the crown from the table and carried it to the hall. He did not put it on. He placed it beside the new road agreement where the workers could see both the authority and the limits written around it. "Tomorrow," Adam said, returning with a plate of cut fruit, "you will read the rest of those petitions." "Tomorrow I will read them. Tonight I will sleep." Adam stopped. "You said that yesterday." Yesterday, the world had not finished objecting. "It never will." Hades looked toward the open gate. Beyond it, the corrected road descended toward the southern districts. carrying carts, messengers, and the first travelers who would not have to pay twice for the privilege of reaching home. Then the house will need more than one person awake, Hades said. Chin set a second chair beside the ledger. Poseidon silently took a position at the gate. Heracles asked the workers whether the new frame needed another brace. Tesla and Beelzebub resumed arguing over the evidence crystal in voices that had already become familiar. Adam divided the fruit and pushed the sweeter pieces toward the servants. Hades sat at last. The crown remained within reach, but not on his head. He opened the first petition and began to read while the factions settled into the work of being a government. The petition concerned a village at the edge of the neutral road. Its residents had been counted as dependents by the family that owned the nearest gate, though none of them had ever signed the ledger. The family had used the classification to collect protection fees and to claim the village's water rights. Hades read the document twice. The first reading gave him the accusation. The second showed him the omission. There was no line for a village to refuse protection, no procedure for a worker to challenge a classification, and no place for a child to inherit land without inheriting a debt. This was written by someone who knows our laws, Merrick said. It was written by someone who knows what our laws refuse to name. Chin leaned over the page. The signature at the bottom belongs to a schoolmaster. Then the schoolmaster has placed a target on his own door, Adam said. He placed a target on the door because the door was already being watched, Hades replied. Send a guard who can be dismissed by the villagers, not one who answers only to me. Merek hesitated. That leaves the guard vulnerable to pressure from the family. Give the guard a public record and 2 witnesses. Pressure prefers darkness. The order was written. Before Merek could seal it, a messenger arrived from the western gate with mud on his boots and a cut across his cheek. He had run rather than use the road, which meant the road's ward had failed or someone had wanted it to appear that way. Poseidon moved first. He crossed the hall in a blur and caught the messenger before the man struck the floor. Blood had soaked through the messenger's sleeve. Poseidon laid him on the nearest table with the offended precision of someone putting down an object that had been handled badly. 3 riders, the messenger said. No family colors. They cut the ward stones and took the village clerk. They asked for the crown's location. Adam's face changed. The warmth did not disappear. It became focused. How long ago? Less than an hour. Hades closed the petition. The first day of number 1 had produced its first emergency. He did not call for the entire faction. He gave orders to the people whose positions matched the danger. Poseidon, take the western gate. Do not pursue beyond the road until the villagers are safe. Heracles, bring the healers and open the old supply passage. Chin, remain here with Merek and finish the records. If the court is attacked, the petitions leave through the lower archive. Chin rose, and you. I am going to retrieve the clerk. Adam stepped beside him. You are not going alone. I did not ask you to. The 2 of them left through the corrected gate. The road dropped between black cliffs where the evening mist collected in strips. Hades moved quickly without running. Adam kept pace, his attention traveling over the stones, the wards, and the faint impressions in the mud. 4 riders, Adam said. The messenger saw 3. The 4th stayed behind to watch the road. Hades stopped. A thread of red light hung between 2 ward stones. It was almost invisible, but the air around it had been cut cleanly. He touched the edge with the butt of his spear. The thread snapped and released a pulse that tried to mark his hand. Adam caught the pulse in his palm. The curse collapsed without leaving a scar. They expected you to touch it, Adam said. They expected the title to make me careless. The title has existed for 1 day. You have been careless for much longer. Hades looked at him. Adam smiled. That was affection. The trail left the road at a ravine and descended toward the village's abandoned waterworks. Hades found the clerk's broken seal beside a collapsed wall. A second seal had been pressed into the mud, the mark of a family that had filed no objection and sent no delegation. Inside the waterworks, someone had lit a blue lamp. Voices carried through the stone. The clerk was arguing with a man whose anger had been polished by years of being obeyed. "You cannot remove the village from our protection," the man said. "Your king has no right to interfere with an old arrangement." "Your arrangement has no signature from the people you tax," the clerk answered. Hades entered the chamber. The man turned with a knife in one hand and the clerk's collar in the other. Two mercenaries stood behind him. The fourth rider waited near the exit, exactly where Adam had predicted. "You came quickly," the man said. "You left a trail." "I left a question, whether number one would leave his court to answer it." "You mistook a hostage for a question." The man pulled the clerk closer. Hades' spear remained lowered. Adam moved one step to the side, placing himself between the hostage and the nearest mercenary without making the action look like an attack. "Give me the village ledger," the man said. "The original, not the copy. Then I return the clerk." "You do not know which ledger you want." The man blinked. "The account has three versions," Hades continued. "One belongs to your family, one belongs to the gate registrar. The third was written by the village schoolmaster. You want the first because it hides the extra tolls. You will not receive it." The knife pressed against the clerk's throat. A red line appeared. Adam's eyes hardened. "Move the blade." The mercenary near him attacked. Adam turned, caught the man's wrist, and used the attacker's own momentum to drive him into the wall. The second mercenary lunged at Hades. Hades shifted half a step. The knife passed his coat without touching skin. He caught the man's elbow, broke the grip, and threw him across the room. The family agent tried to cut the clerk's throat before Hades could reach him. Adam was faster. His hand closed around the blade. The metal stopped, trembling, 2 fingers from the clerk's skin. "You had a chance to leave," Adam said. The agent let go of the knife. "You are a queen." "I am Adam. The peace is your excuse, not my name." Hades took the clerk behind him and looked at the agent. The man's courage had drained away, but his pride remained. Hades recognized the combination. It produced more damage after defeat than before it. "Why take the village?" Hades asked. "Because your rule removes the value of our protection." "No, it removes the value of protection that exists only because people are forbidden to refuse it." "You think every village can govern itself?" "I think every village can tell the truth about who governs it." The agent laughed once. "That is not strength. Strength is why you are alive. Law is why you will leave this room alive. Do not confuse the two." When Poseidon arrived, the mercenaries were bound, and the clerk was sitting against the wall with a healer's cloth at his throat. Poseidon looked at the agent as though measuring the distance required to remove him from the world. "He is to be tried," Hades said. Poseidon's expression suggested that trials were a particularly slow form of weather. He obeyed anyway. The walk back took longer. The clerk carried the 3 ledgers under his coat. Adam carried the broken knife. Hades carried the agent's seal, which he had removed from the mud and wrapped in cloth. "You will display that?" the clerk asked. "I will display the evidence. The seal can be returned after the court determines whether your family still has a legal name. They will call this an invasion." They called the first objection an invasion because I read it. Their words are not a measure of the act. At the gate, Heracles had organized the healers and workers into 2 lines. The wounded messenger had been treated. The broken ward stones had not been repaired. Heracles had placed lanterns beside them so every traveler could see the failure. "That was not my order," Hades said. "No," Heracles replied. "It was the safest thing to do while the road was dark." Hades looked at the lanterns, then nodded. "Keep them until the new stones are tested by 3 people who did not set them." Heracles smiled. "A good rule." Back in the hall, Merrick had finished the village order and opened a new file for the captured agent. Chin had separated the agent's family records from the court records and marked each disputed line in red ink. "You missed dinner," Adam told Hades. "So did everyone else. That is not a defense." He placed a plate in front of Hades. The food was cold, but Hades ate while Merrick explained the Root's new oversight board, and Chin described the danger of allowing one family to control both a gate and its court. Poseidon stood by the door. He had refused a chair, a drink, and every attempt to thank him. When the captured agent's family sent a demand for his release, Poseidon read it and folded the page into a narrow strip. "They threaten the shrine," he said. "They threaten the court," Hades corrected. "The shrine is stone, the court is trust." Poseidon considered that. "Then I will guard the court." It was the closest thing to a promise he had offered since arriving. Adam glanced at Hades, who gave no outward sign that the words mattered. The crown remained on the table until the next morning. By then, the road had a neutral ward, the village had a hearing date, the captured agent had a legal advocate, and the workers had added their own names to the gate's maintenance register. Hades found the last addition beside a crude drawing of the corrected hinge. The drawing was not accurate. It showed the hinge larger than it was, and the gate straighter than the carpenters had managed. He left it in the register. A kingdom did not become true because its ruler won a final match. It became true when ordinary people began leaving evidence in its records without waiting to be invited. Hades returned to the hall, put on the crown, and called for the next petition.